are you guys doing? I love coffee. I just made fresh homemade almond milk this morning, right before adding it into my coffee. I don't know if you guys can see, but so good. Welcome back to Prosperity Study. We are picking up where we left off last time, which is chapter 2 of As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. So let me get that open in my big old book. Hope you're doing well today. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. Effect of thought and circumstances, As a Man Thinketh, James Allen. I am going to do my best to just read through this and not comment too much, but I can't, no promises. I might end up commenting here, so at least you know what my intention is to just read through it. Again, disclaimer, this book was written in 1902, so some of the context and some of the vocabulary is a bit old. Makes it even more fun to look up things, so I have my dictionary ready. If we need to look up more words, we will do that. Okay. Effect of thought and circumstances. Effect of thought on circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruit which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever-increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that, for the time being, they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thoughts which he has built into his character have brought him there. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of a law which cannot err. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as of those who are contented with them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is that he may learn, that he may grow. And as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Man is buffeted by circumstances so long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions. But when he realizes that he is a creative power and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being out of which circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself. Coffee. That circumstances grow out of thought, every man knows who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification. For he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstances has been in exact ratio with his altered mental condition. So true is this, that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character and make swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. Vicissitudes. I looked that up last time. I remember what it means contextually. Vicissitudes are like things that happen that you don't want to happen. Here, we will double check. Vicissitudes. Vicissitudes. A change of circumstances or fortune, typically one that is unwelcome or unpleasant. So yeah, an unpleasant change of circumstances. Wheel of Fortune in reverse. Okay. Backing up. So true is this, that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character and makes swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. So, I mean, that should be encouraging, honestly, because if we know that we're making a lot of progress on growing ourselves and our character, and then you're like bombarded with a whole like plethora of situations that seem unpleasant quickly, it's kind of like, well, yeah, because you've just been raising your vibration and working on yourself, so you've kind of like fast tracked a bit, and so any of those circumstances that were going to happen anyway because of your past choices, they have to happen probably much faster because you're accelerating yourself. That's just one way of looking at it. You know, that's not, take it with a grain of salt. Moving forward, okay. The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, and that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of its unchastened desires. And circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind and to take root there produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into act and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. Good thoughts bear good fruit, bad thoughts bad fruit. The outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and bliss. Following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts, by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will-o-wisps of impure imaginings or steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor, a man at last arrives at their fruition and fulfillment in the outer conditions of his life. The laws of growth and adjustment everywhere obtain. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought had long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed its gathered power. Circumstance does not make the man, it reveals him to himself. No such conditions can exist as descending into vice and its attendant sufferings apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations. That was a sentence. And man, therefore, as the Lord and master of thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and author of environment. Even at birth, the soul comes to its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weakness. You hanging in there? You guys doing all right? It's wordy. These books, like that already was so much information and vocabulary, right? Like there's some, and they're long sentences too, like, whoa. So it's a lot of information, and it's okay if at this point you're like, I'm exhausted. I can't anymore. I can't listen. I can't follow along. I don't know what she's talking about. Know that that's totally normal. When I first started reading these books, I literally, this is a compilation that has 19 books in it. So it's even already just a bit intimidating and overwhelming, the amount of information in here that is information that we're not really taught anyway. So it's like you're reading Latin, you know? It is a whole new language. So if you're already feeling a bit burnt out or exhausted, no problem. You can always watch this again later. You can always pick up the book later. That's what I did. I literally would like just open the book at random and let my eyes just land on like that. That would probably be all that I could read one day when I first started diving into this stuff, because it just, you need time to wrap your head around some of these thoughts and principles, and you need time to absorb it, and you need time to actually experience it for yourself. So with this, like if you're still watching right now, and if you're not, that's cool, clearly you are, so yeah. But if you're still like watching right now, congratulate yourself, you know, with humility, but for real, like this is very dense material. So hopefully I'm reading it in a way that's like, brings it up a little bit, lightens it up, because shoo, I mean, it's taken me years to be able to read like pages at a time of many of these books. And this is one of the more like simple introductory books. So you're doing great. It's a continual journey. If you are interested in this, it's never gonna end. So you have like all the time of your life to dive into this. So if you want to do more, my suggestion is just little baby bites daily. And you'll find you'll be actually able to comprehend and absorb and understand more of these concepts as time goes on. Okay, back at it. All right. Okay. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their inmost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is our very self. Man is manacled. Manacled, that's another word I had to look up. And I will again, just because manacled is, it's kind of like manicured, molded, like manacled, like los manos, or hands in Spanish. So manacled, made and molded. We don't need to do that. You can look it up. manacled. Man is manacled only by himself. Thought and action are the jailers of fate. They imprison, being base. They are also the angels of freedom. They liberate, being noble. What? Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their inmost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It's our very self. So man is manacled only by himself. Thought and action are the jailers of fate because they can imprison. If the thoughts are base, if the thoughts are in that old way of thinking, the wrong way of thinking, they imprison. But thought and action are also the angels of freedom because they liberate. If we have noble thoughts and right thinking, they can free us. They can create abundance. So that's what that sentence is saying. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get, but what he justly earns. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with his thoughts and actions. In the light of this truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that a man is continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing. It means that man is continually revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. That cause may take the form of a conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor and thus calls aloud for remedy. Like, what's the use of continually fighting this outside effect when really the way to change it is going inward, is what that's saying. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is as true of earthly as of heavenly things. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so he who would realize a strong and well-poised life. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so he who would realize a strong and well-poised life. This is really cool. This is really helpful for me right now, honestly, because this is talking about that succession of vicissitudes that comes in when you rapidly remedy the defects in your character. Like when you really put in this time to work on yourself, there is huge personal sacrifice. You literally lose friendships and relationships with people who've been in your life for a very long time, because you're now changing who you are. Those dynamics change as well, and it's honestly usually really painful. Personally, it's been really difficult, but so well worth it. So well worth it. Because what I am stepping into is a realization of a strong and well-poised life, right? So it's kind of like, you get knocked down 7 times and you get up 8. Well, when you get so determined to deep dive in yourself, you're gonna be met with more opposition. Do it anyway. Okay. You're still here. You guys are baller. Baller. Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and home comforts should be improved, yet all the time he shirks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the insufficiency of his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles which are the basis of true prosperity, and is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. Here is a man who is the victim of a painful and persistent disease as the result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural viands. Viands. V-I-A-N-D-S. Viands. Vanities. Desires. Viands. Let's see. An item of food. What? An item of food. So, viand. Number 1, archaic. An item of food. An unlimited assortment of viands. Viands? I don't know. 2, Asian. A meat, seafood, or vegetable dish that accompanies rice in a typical Filipino meal. A sumptuous lunch of rice and 2 viands. Meat? We're in this together, right? All right, where is this word viand? Where did it go? There. So here's a rich man, a victim of gluttony. He's willing to pay to get rid of it, but not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural viands, foods. Oh, his taste for rich and unnatural foods, and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principle of a healthy lifestyle. Here is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage, and in the hope of making larger profits, reduces the wages of his work people. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity, and when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. Excuse me. Coffee. That almond milk is creamier than the whipping cream I've been using. Oh, it's so good. Okay. I have introduced these 3 cases merely as an illustrative of the truth that man is the causer, though nearly always unconsciously, of his circumstances, and that while aiming at a good end, he is continually frustrating its accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he so resolves, trace the action of the laws of thought in his own mind and life. And until this is done, mere external facts cannot serve as a ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are so complicated, thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may not be known to himself, a man's entire soul condition cannot be judged by another from the external aspect of his life alone. A man may be honest in certain directions, yet suffer privations. A man may be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth. But the conclusion usually formed that the one man fails because of his particular honesty, and that the other prospers because of his particular dishonesty, is the result of superficial judgment, which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and the honest man almost entirely virtuous. In the light of a deeper knowledge and wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous. The dishonest man may have some admirable virtues which the other does not possess, and the honest man obnoxious vices which are absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of his honest thoughts and acts. He also brings upon himself the sufferings which his vices produce. The dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has extirpated, get rid of, that's my guess. When I was younger, I always just guessed meanings of words, and it did not serve me in the long run. So now I just look it up. If I don't know a word, I'm going to learn it, and I'm going to keep looking it up until I know what it means. Okay, what word was it? Extirpated. E-X-T-I-R-P-A-T-E-D. Extirpated. Root out and destroy completely. Oh, not just get rid of, like take it out and destroy it. It's gone completely. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind and washed every sinful stain from his soul can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities. And on the way to, yet long before he has reached that supreme perfection, he will have found, working in his mind and life, the great law which is absolutely just and which cannot, therefore, give good for evil or evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, and that all his past experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is but saying that nothing can come from corn but corn, nothing from nettles but nettles. Men understand this law in the natural world and work with it, but few understand it in the mental and moral world, though its operation there is just as simple and undeviating, and they therefore do not cooperate with it, the men, with the law. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. Read that again. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication. That's really creamy almond milk. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross had been removed, and a perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness, not lack of material possessions, is the measure of wrong thought. Ooh, I'm gonna write that down. If you guys know already, I go nuts highlighting and marking in my books. So it helps me to learn better. So, and I like that. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. Like, so how often and to the quality that you feel blessed, that's the effect of previous right thinking. And to the effect that you feel wretched or like not a good person or upset, that is the effect of previous wrong thinking. Judgment, criticism, hatred, jealousy, envy, all of that. Blessedness is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness, not lack of material possessions, is the measure of wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich. He may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the riches are rightly and wisely used. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the riches are rightly and wisely used. And the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his lot as a burden unjustly imposed. Be grateful for everything that's around you. It's a reminder for me right now. Indigence and indulgence. Indigence. There's so many words. Indigence. A state of extreme poverty. And indulgence. Let's just see what it says. I know that indulge is to take too much, but the action or fact of indulging, okay. A thing that is indulged in, luxury. An extension of the time in which a bill or debt has to be paid. Like a giving of more. Indulge, to indulge in. To indulge in. Indigence is extreme poverty, and indulgence, extreme reveling in the luxury, are the two extremes of wretchedness. Extreme poverty versus extreme luxury. Well, at least that works for my brain. Okay. Indigence and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural and the result of mental disorder. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, and prosperous being. And happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of a harmonious adjustment of the inner with the outer, of the man with his surroundings. Result of a mental disorder. Woo. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, and prosperous being. How do you become that? By becoming it inside. These are great reminders just for me. Okay. A man only begins. Pause. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revel and commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. And as he adapts his mind to that regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as the cause of his condition and builds himself up in strong and noble thoughts, ceases to kick against circumstances but begins to use them and aids to his more rapid progress, and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle of the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. And righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find that the universe is right. And during the process of putting himself right, he will find that as he alters his thoughts towards things and other people will alter toward him. The proof of this truth is in every person, and it therefore admits of easy investigation by systematic introspection and self-analysis. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will effect in the material conditions of his life. Men imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance. Bestial thoughts crystallize into habits of drunkenness and sensuality, which solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. Impure thoughts of every kind crystallize in enervating and confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and indecision crystallize into weak, unmanly, and irresolute habits, which solidify into circumstances of failure, indigence, extreme poverty. I know that word now. And slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into habits of uncleanliness and dishonesty, which solidify into circumstances of foulness and vagary. Hateful and condemnatory thoughts crystallize into habits of accusation and violence. Thoughts crystallize into habits of accusation and violence, which solidify into circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of self-seeking, which solidify into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace and kindliness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize into habits of temperance and self-control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage, self-reliance, and decision crystallize into manly habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, and freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness. Gentle and forgiving thoughts crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservative circumstances. Loving and unselfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgetfulness for others, which solidify into circumstances of sure and abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its results on the character and circumstances. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly yet surely shape his circumstances. Nature helps every man to the gratification of the thoughts which he most encourages. Sorry, I wrote interesting notes that kind of threw me off here. Okay. Nature helps every man to the gratification of the thoughts which he most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both the good and evil thoughts. Well, that's happening right now. Corona. So it's saying here that whatever your thoughts are, that if they're continuing to build energy, nature can step in and create circumstances to create those thoughts into reality. Be it good or bad, whatever, but nature can really help this. So looking at like natural disasters or things that happen, the current pandemic that's happening, could argue from this that it was created because for years a lot of us have been saying like, oh, I don't want to go to work. Oh, I wish I could just work from home or have this great life where blah, blah, blah. And then so many of us have thought that way. I'm not saying that everyone wants to work from home. I'm just saying that there are enough people with the same kind of thought, that's really powerful. And I'm not saying that that's what caused the coronavirus. I'm not a scientist. I don't dabble in that. But from these principles, it's saying that whatever we think about, what our predominating thoughts are, we can create and we can co-create into reality. So if you're unhappy with where you're at, then it's a clear indication that there's unhappiness inside, like within. And so the answer is not to try to change something in the external, but to change what's going on in the internal. Almost done. 40 minutes. If you're here right now, you're like genius. This is difficult information. But for those of us that enjoy it, like, we can't get enough of it, right? Right? Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften to him and be ready to help him. Let him put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and lo, opportunities will spring up on every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let him encourage good thoughts, and no hard fate shall bind him down to wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors which at every succeeding moment it presents to you are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. And this chapter ends with a little poem, and we will be done for today. Itch break. All right, poem. You will be what you will be. Let failure find its false content in that poor word environment, but spirit scorns it and is free. Its master's time, it conquers space. It cows that boastful trickster chance and bids the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill a servant's place. The human will, that force unforeseen, the offspring of a deathless soul, can hew a way to any goal, though walls of granite intervene. Be not impatient in delay, but wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. Thanks for joining me, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this in some context and that it helped to just give you new ways of thinking about things. I hope that it helps you expand. Have a lovely day. I'll see you guys in the next video.